O Bhagavad Gita, by which Arjuna was illumined by Lord Krishna himself, and which was composed of 18 chapters from within the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa. O Divine Mother, destroyer of rebirth, who showers the nectar of oneness upon us. O Bhagavad Gita, my affectionate mother, on thee I meditate. All the Upanishads are the cows. The milker is the cowherd boy, Krishna. Arjuna is the calf. People of purified intellect are the drinkers. And the milk is the supreme nectar of the Gita. My salutations to the Lord, who is the source of supreme bliss, whose grace makes the mute eloquent and the crippled cross mountains. Hari Om Tat Sat. Okay, so we pick up right where Lord Krishna said, okay, I have taught you fully, completely, now it's up to you, but just to make sure, one more time, I'll give you the essence of the teaching. So we'll pick up Swami Shivananda's translation this morning. So 64 is this. Hear thou again my supreme word, most secret of all, because thou art dearly beloved of me. I will tell thee what is good. 65. Fix thy mind on me, be devoted to me, sacrifice to me, bow down to me. Thou shalt come even to me, truly do I promise unto thee, for thou art dear to me. So this is the essence. It's the essence really of all of the yogas too, you know. So fix your mind only on me is Raja Yoga, single-pointed mind meditation. Devote yourself completely to me, Bhakti Yoga. So the heart that longs for service of the one, you know. Offer everything to me is which one?
Karma Yoga.
You got it, Karma Yoga, yeah. And then even, and you shall surely come to me, is speaking of union, which is Jnana Yoga, the path of wisdom. Swami Shivananda says this. He says, develop one-pointedness of mind. Fix thy thought on me. If the mind wanders, bring it again and again to the center or point or object of meditation through constant practice. And lest this be confused with seated meditation, it's everything. The concept of samadhi, the stable mind. Stable mind requires one point in mind, and that means eyes open, eyes closed. And they know the story, but I have to share. Swami Ramaswarup's image is up here, the laughing yogi, bottom right corner. Swami Ramaswarup merged in late July of last year, and he's Ramaswarup, the embodiment of Ram or Dharma, but really Prema Swarup, the embodiment of love. So, and he loved to tell this story. This was his favorite story, and he tells the story of a sannyasin. Doesn't matter the cloth or anything, but someone sitting in the forest, and if you came across them, you would think surely they're crazy, because you could see them opening their eyes for a while and looking around, and then closing their eyes and staying still and not doing a thing other than that. And so Swamiji would describe the inner. So sitting for some time with eyes closed And the thought comes, if God is outside, why do I have my eyes closed? And so he opens his eyes and he looks around and sees what he needs to see. And then after some time, he says to himself, if God is inside, why do I have my eyes open? And so he closes his eyes. So what Swamiji is describing is the one in Samadhi, the one who is seeing God, eyes open, eyes closed. And that absolute is the single point. So thinking only of me, like this. In a way, we can say it's hard, but in another way, it is so darn simple, because there's one reality underlying everything. Even this little monkey head, there's only one reality underlying it. It's not a monkey head in and of itself. It's made of the Supreme through the gunas, through the 5 elements. And so its body, its existence is none other than the one. So in a way, it's simple. But of course, the situation that we find ourselves in with the Lord in the form of Maya, the delusive element, is we find ourselves with the idea of separation, the feeling of separation. And so he says, the way out, fix your mind only on me. And then offer all of thy actions to me. Let thy tongue utter my name. This is Swami Shivananda just adding his commentary on it. Let thy hands work for me. Let thy feet move for me. Let all thy actions be for me. Give up hatred towards any living creature. Bow down to me, then thou wilt attain me. The Lord gives Arjuna his definite word of promise or solemn declaration. This sloka appears in the Gita 3 times. It's the only one that's repeated. The words are very, very slightly different, but the one difference in this shloka is the thou shalt truly come to me, I assure you. This statement is unique in this shloka. If we get the bhava of the Bhagavad Gita, so Lord Krishna is Lord of the heart, Vasudeva. He's in the heart. The symbolism, of course, of the carriage is the body. And in the body, Arjuna is representing the intellect, the rationating faculty, the conscious mind, the ability to ask questions, to determine, to choose within and without. And the horses represent the sense objects, the reins, the mind. And then Krishna, of course, is representing the center of us, the Lord of the heart. Not something outside, not something on a cross or any of that. Inside. Which we typically will hear as our conscience when we're really beginning to come to spiritual path. And so here he's saying, devote yourself completely to me. Devote yourself completely to the light, however we relate. And do everything for me, and thou shalt surely come to me. Thou shalt achieve yoga. And we're saying the bhava of the Bhagavad Gita is this heart is full of love. It's not the kind of love that we imagine love to be. We had a wonderful conversation about love yesterday evening on our end of the table. I don't know what you were talking about on your end of the table, but on our end, one of the discussions was about love. And we had 2 senior Buddhist practitioners and then Christian mystic and more native traditions represented. And we're talking about love. And what we come to is that love is innate. It's not something that you do. It's something that you are. It's not a thing either. It's innate. Swami Ramaswarup would also say, whenever I said early on, I said, oh, Swamiji, this is amazing. I feel like I'm falling in love. And he said, no. rising in love. And then he said, and you need to remember, love is not a verb, it's a noun. So if you can recognize the difference, love is not what you do, love is who you are. At the deepest subject. And the subject is pure in this way. Swami Chinmayananda in his Holy Gita, when a couple of years ago, we were reading from him in the Yoga of Devotion. And we got to a discussion, a commentary from him on love. And he gives this example on love. He says, actually, everybody is love, everyone. He said, love is innate, it's natural. And then he describes, say that you bang your toe on the foot of a bed. If you hurt your toe, if you think of that, I think that's a common thing. I think probably all of us have done. If you reflect on it, you'll see that there's no consideration at all about the worthiness of the toe. There's no checking, there's no hesitation. There's no question about, were you a good toe? Or what color are you? Or are you my tribe or some other tribe? There's no limitation. All of us, even the ones of us who take ourselves to be separate, this body separate from that body, and this person separate from that person, even then, we don't doubt unity with the toe. It's innate. And so what do? Immediately we come to the aid. Immediately, without any hesitation whatsoever. And he says that's the innate love. That's the love, the real love. It's not a romantic love. It's not a kind of action. It's born. How do you even say it's not even born? It simply exists.
It arises?
No, it doesn't even arise. Actions arise, thoughts arise, desires arise. It is. It simply is. The Buddhist practitioner, Roshi, used the term suchness. So the Buddha nature, suchness. It simply is. It's not something added. It's not something done. It's not something arising. It's not a thing. It's innate. And in the absence of the feeling or idea of separation, it is the nature. Where there's no consideration of... So such is the love that Krishna has for us that's underpinning the teaching of the Gita. And such is the love that we will discover when we let go of the feeling of being separate. Because we already have it. We had the opportunity to give a talk a year or so ago at Center for Spiritual Living. And the theme of the talk was, all that you have to do is erase the lines. You've mistakenly drawn lines around yourself. You've mistakenly drawn a line, like in crayon, around this body and says, this is me. And then you draw a line around someone else and you say, and that's you. That's what's happening in the psyche. And all that's really required is you just erase the line. And we do this, we have experience with this, because when we first fall in love with another person, we actively erase the line between us. Right? You really erase it. You take them as yourself, and you do everything for them as you would do for yourself. Yes? Only when something starts ringing not right, only when the instinctive nature is asserting and saying, but, I'm not getting what I need, do you start drawing the lines again. Right? So that's all that's needed. And how to erase the line? Well, that's this devotional statement here that the Lord is making, which is erase the line between you and me and recognize that I am in everyone and everyone is in me. So those are those two. Think only of me and devote yourself completely to me. Because in doing so, you erase the line. And that's not a love that's given or taken or that's expressed. It's a love that simply is. It simply is, innate.
So it's the feeling of separation that is covering, we can say?
That's all. It's just the ego sense. That's all that's covering. But then everything built of the ego sense. We had Chandrika Devi, Chandrika rather, with us. And she might be joining us this morning. But she was with us for close to a week, remember? She's a computer programmer. So that's, I mean, it's not who she is. That's what she does. But Swami has experience with this as well, not actually programming, but we were laughing about it. We were saying, okay, when the first line of code in a computer program, when the first line of code is incorrect, what about every other line written from there? And incorrect. So what's required, it's like having a phone where when it turns on, that's the first action of the phone, it has an error in it. And then the programmers write everything on how it's to function from there. But it will still have that fundamental error, and that's all we're dealing with, actually. It's the delusive aspect of mind. And so Satchidananda is innate. And this love that we're talking about is concomitant. It's consistent with Ananda. And Ananda is not what we think it is either. But we use the words because that's what we're given. But this commitment to come back to is a statement coming from this love, which is absolute. Telling us again, you have choice. I've given you free will. I've given you the will to choose which direction you wish to go, to choose what you wish to endeavor in. You don't have a choice about acting. It's made this clear. You're going to have to act. You're going to have to do, as long as you're apart from me. And we come back to that point in the next sloka. But I'm offering you this. And if you can do this, think only of me, devote completely to me, and offer everything to me, then I promise you, you shall have me. And Swami Shivananda adds this guidance, his own personal guidance. And Swami Shivananda is also an embodiment of the same love. He says, have faith in the words of the Lord and make a solemn promise. Take the Lord as your sole refuge. You will attain final emancipation. So that's Swami Shivananda's added guidance to what Lord Krishna has said here. The secret of devotion is to take the Lord as your sole refuge. And then he introduces the next verse. In the next verse, the Lord proceeds to speak of the gist of self-surrender. And 66. By the way, in our program off-site, there are 12. Most of the day yesterday was spent in meditation. Every 45 minutes, there's a reading or a mantra or something like this. And Alan, dear Alan, is very hyped up on the relationship with the Absolute. And so he wanted to talk about the Geeta teaching, and these were the two slokas that he chose to talk about. So a little preview this morning. 66. Abandoning all duties, or abandoning all dharma, Take refuge in me alone. I will liberate thee from all sins. Grieve not. Not meaning, well, let's let Swami Shivananda speak, and then we can add a little perhaps. He says, this is the answer given by the Lord to the question put by Arjuna in chapter 2, verse 7. And he gives the question, I ask thee which may be better, tell me that decidedly. I am thy disciple, suppliant to thee, teach me. And he breaks it down. All dharmas, righteous deeds, including a dharma, all actions, righteous, unrighteous, as absolute freedom from all actions intended to be taught here. Taking refuge in me applies the knowledge of unity without any thought of duality. Knowing that there is nothing else except me, the self of all, dwelling the same in all. If thou art established in this faith, I shall liberate thee from all sins, from all bonds of dharma and adharma, or you could say karma, all bonds resulting from action, by manifesting myself as thy own self. To behold forms is the dharma of the eye. The eye's job is to behold forms. The support or substratum of all forms is Brahman, the absolute. When you look at an object, behold Brahman, which is the one essence, and abandon the form as it is illusory and unreal. Have the same attitude towards the other objects which pertain to the other senses. Give up the jiva dharma. And he explains the notions, I am the doer of actions. I enjoy. I am a brahmana, I'm a brahmachari, I'm young, I'm old, I'm woman, I'm man, go on and on. I'm endowed with a little knowledge and power, etc. And get yourself established in Brahma Bhavana, the understanding or knowledge, I am Brahman. This is what is meant by taking refuge in Lord Krishna, according to the Vedantins. Work ceaselessly for the Lord, but surrender the fruits of all actions to the Lord. Take the Lord as your sole refuge. Live for him, work for him, serve him in all forms, or her. This is not a gender. Worship him in your heart. Consecrate all of your life, all actions, feelings, and thoughts to the Lord. You will rest in her. You will attain union with her. You will attain immortal supreme peace and eternal bliss. This is the view of another school of thought. And then he adds one more. Sri Shankara very strongly refutes the idea that knowledge in conjunction with karma, action, produces or leads to liberation. He says that karma and knowledge may not go together in the same person, that karma helps a man to get purification of the heart, and that right knowledge of the self alone will give him absolute freedom from samsara. He says that work and knowledge are like darkness and light, that action is possible only in this universe of illusory phenomena, which is the projection of ignorance. We'll talk about that a little bit. Because Maya and mind are the same. This delusory principle is given to us as mind. And so the mind itself is delusive. However, it can be trained to be a friend. But the way to train it to be a friend is to stop listening to the ego sense, which is really the seed of the delusion, and start listening to the light instead. You shared something with me the other day from A Course in Miracles, a quote related to us no longer listening, taking Christ as our teacher, taking Christ as our teacher, and listening to Christ and no longer listening to the ego, which is the same concept exactly. That's A Course in Miracles, and something that you relate to clearly. So,
So similar.
Yeah, it's the same teaching, different words, same teaching. The ego itself is the delusion, and the mind under the sway of the ego is delusive. That is, everything under the sway of the ego. When my mind, let's just say it this way, when my mind is following my sense of being separate, I feel separate. So it starts here. I feel separate, like envelop the heart. I feel separate. And our dear Nataraj, so beautiful the other day, he said this so purely and so beautifully. He said, at ashram, I feel like I'm supposed to do something, but I don't know what it is. And what's happening is, in the company of the feeling of separation, there's a longing for completion. And then in the human experience, we start thinking about what it is that we need. And normally those two are so closely aligned that we're not even recognizing them as different functions within the human experience. But they are. And that feeling of separation or need, that is the ego sense. That is the ego sense. And when the mind is taking the ego sense as its master, then we are separate for all intents and purposes. All the actions that we engage in would be said to be sinful. That's not judgmental. It just means they're leading us away from the light. That's all that sin means. It's not bad in the sense of people using the word sin in the world. It just means an action which leads us away from the light. Because why? Because the ego is shadow. And when we follow it in the mind and then in the actions, we are honoring or engaging in shadow, taking us away from the pure light. And so what Krishna is giving here is how to come back. And here's the idea that you're doing something is shadow. We've explored this together, right? Mother giving milk is not. The universal is doing it. Yes? I am not doing anything. Even the will that I use in order to will this hand to rise is not my will. Ego. And ego says it is. But in reality, there's only the absolute here. And so even that is borrowed or appropriated in some way. It's an idea that it's my will.
It's also a feeling.
Yeah. Feeling, idea. Try to separate the two. So, feeling, ego sense, feeling, false. Feelings are arising. It's false. You're not separate, and you're not doing.
Where are the feelings coming from? Like the emotions.
God. God.
S-O-U-R-C-E?
Sorry?
S-O-U-R-C-E?
Source. The one. They're also universal, but shared. So if you imagine for a moment, you tune into something. You tune into thoughts. You tune into desires. You tune into feelings. They exist, but they're universal. Just like motherhood is universal. It exists, but you're not the mother. It feels like you are. And that experience of having Tao at the breast and suckling feels like you are. But you are source, you're spirit. And so, and all of this is. And so what's the cure? Here, when we're talking about abandoning Dharma, he's not talking about not doing. He's talking about recognizing that you're not doing. And allow the doing to continue as it should, but abandon all of it. Doesn't mean stop it. Does that make sense? Abandon it. Abandon it. Stop trying to take shelter in it. Stop trying to define yourself by it. Define yourself by me, he says. Define yourself by me, not by what you do, not by the class in society that you are, not by the gender. All of these are related to Dharma. All of these are related to action, what you're doing. But they're not related to who you are. Who you are is spirit. And so we hear these words, and this is seminal teaching. This is really the essence of renunciation. This is the chapter this final chapter is the yoga of wisdom through renunciation. Meaning, abandon all of these notions and ideas of I'm doing this, I'm doing that, you need to do this, you need to do that. I did my duty, now you do yours. I'm this, you're that.
Victimization.
All of this. Let it all be, abandon it, and take refuge in me. That's it. So for you, Mother, take refuge in Mother. Take refuge in Mother. You have this beautiful experience and you see that the Mother is real and what I took myself to be, well, not really. And that's perfect because that opens up the field of play for you. Now you can take yourself to be who you really are.
I was wondering, I can't remember if I asked this before, but what is the purpose of the Maya and the emotional wave? Like the things that really mess with us? Is that evolution or something?
Oh, there are stories about that, but some would say purposeless. Purposeless. God's Leela, God's play. That's the pretty consistent one that comes through in different traditions. God's Leela. Swami Premananda, one day when someone had asked that question, he laughed, his big laugh, and he said, let's say that Brahman, the absolute, one without a second, had a thought. And then he said, how did he have a thought? Well, he did. And the thought was, I am one, let me see myself as many. And from that, all of this. As a practical matter, we can't understand the workings of Maya. It's mysterious. We cannot understand the workings of it. But we can understand that the feelings are false. And we can, from that, follow the science and connect with the truth of us and be free of the sway of ego, of the sway of the feeling of separation. Peace Pilgram, this beautiful, simple saint, in her 4 renunciations, the second renunciation that she practiced and was quite successful with, is renouncing the feeling of being separate. And it is a feeling, but it is possible with these instruments to discover that it's false. And in discovering that it's false, it's possible to recognize the unity and live in the unity. And finally, that feeling doesn't even pester you any longer. It falls away like a shadow that it is.
The veil has been lifted.
And the veil has been lifted. And so this is the situation. And so we can tell stories about why, but we can describe and point to the potential for each of us to take this hero's journey and to be free of those false notions. Okay, anything else? Radha, any questions too? Hari? Good. All right, let's close with final prayer and arati. And we'll have the short one again today and tomorrow morning, both. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mukshiyama Mritata Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mukshiyama Mritata Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mukshiyama Mritata Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O adorable Lord of mercy and love, let us abide in thee forever and ever. Humble our Satguru Shivananda Maharaj Ki, for all the saints and sages of all the traditions. Let's rise for short arati, page 212.